It's the Brandon Cruz Daily Fantasy Podcast, where I go and look at low-owned plays and strategies specifically designed for GPPs. This is a show for people who are already informed on daily fantasy sports and how these contests operate. If you have any questions related to the NFL or NASCAR that you're too embarrassed to ask your usual DFS provider, or if you just can't find the answer anywhere else, give me a tweet at BrandonCruzDFS and I'll give you my opinion. Most importantly, take everything here with a grain of salt and use your best judgment when making entries. Additionally, if you have a gambling addiction, that's not my problem. Alright, so this is going to be a little bit different than what I normally do. This is going to be a rare occasion where I actually ask you to please watch the video. I have some graphics on here. I actually took some time to write some slides down and to visually show you. And it's going to be a very visual video today. I'm only going to make this one video, and it's going to cover both the trucks and the Cup Series at Talladega. But it's not really covering the drivers. It's covering how I make my lineups for super speedways, how I go about deciding who I want in them. And this is universal for duels, for the second Daytona race, for the first Talladega. Well, the first Talladega race is usually calm, so that one is usually a bit different. But this covers pretty much the duels, Daytona 500, every truck plate track, every plate race, every Xfinity plate race, every Cup plate race, and things of that nature. I'm going to start this example with the duels because I think that's the easiest to visually see, and then I'm going to expand that to the 40-car field for the Cup Series on Sunday, and I'm going to just show you how I make my lineups. Traditionally, since I turned 18 here in Texas, because you can play DraftKings in Texas, I have always been the most profitable on super speedways. Stupid Justin Haley was the only driver outside the top 25 that I did not own at Daytona. I can't imagine what I would have done if I would have won it, because I made quite a bit of money without having Haley there. Obviously, that's a crazy way to end a race there, but I don't think I've ever lost money on a super speedway weekend. That's including like both races, 3 races. I think I've had some issues on some Xfinity races that have gone green to the end. But the Cups, on overall weekends, I certainly haven't lost any money. So we're going to move to this dual example, this NASCAR ownership percentage here. I got to write down when I actually went to these slides, so it's easier for me to put in into the video. 232, close enough. All right, looking at this slide right here. This is just going to be a visual representation of the dual races, so I've just listed the drivers because there's only 40 cars that make the fucking Daytona 500, and this year it was useless because 20 drivers were in each duel. It was a waste of time. But anyway, so this is how the breakdown is. Obviously, drivers 1 through 10, drivers or 11 through 20th. I wanted to do it side by side, but I think that might have been a bit confusing, like, you know, row 1, 1, 2, 3, 4. But I feel like this is a better example for here. So obviously, the way I approach these plate races is that anyone can win, anything can happen. I'm not really too caught up on playing any favorites. I think the only time I did that was when Junior was still racing, and even when he raced, I mean, he was up and down his last few years, especially at Daytona. At Talladega, he was still pretty dominant, but he struggled at Daytona the last couple of years he was racing there. But yeah, so this is how I think it should usually break down. Hold on, let me write it down. 340. Okay, so moving on to the ownership percentages that I usually end up seeing on a dual race. The reason I'm using this is because most people would play drivers from the back. Most people expect to play drivers from the back. You can't lose anything. So, oh God, sorry for the trash truck coming through here. You normally can't lose any positions if you start, or you can't lose any DraftKings points if you start players from the back. So obviously, I'm going to use this example as if it was a 100-man tournament. So by definition, the highest possible lineup and drivers are drivers T, S, R, Q, P, and O. Those are the bottom 6 drivers, the last 6 starting drivers there. They have the most potential to gain positions, and they can't really lose you any points, even between themselves. Say if O gets passed by P, you know, that point just transfers to P. You don't lose anything between these 6 drivers if they're racing amongst themselves. And typically, even in dual races, something usually happens with a car up front. There could be a couple crashes here and there. But this is the highest projected lineup, not including lead laps, not including fast laps. But we can't really predict those at super speedways. Let's say, for example, because the play drivers from the back strategy has become very clear and very well known the past couple of years. So let's say in a tournament of 100 people, let's say 15 people play this lineup. So out of 100 people, 15% of the field have this lineup. Now, the positions that I normally try and hit if I'm making a dual lineup, and I'm going to get to the Talladega race, don't worry, we're going to get there. I'm using this as an example first. In a dual race, I usually try and hit 4th through 8th. I'll usually stack 5 guys from the back and play a driver either 4th, 5th, 6th, or 8th, just because usually that's where the lowest percentage is, regardless of who they are. I mean, unless it's like Logano starting 5th, unless it's like some big name, some big driver that carries ownership with just their name on a plate track. Usually 4th through 8 is, or 4th through 6, 4th through 8 is the dead spot on dual races between where no one really wants to own anybody. You know, the leader's usually owned because they expect him to have the fastest car. He's either going to lead the most laps or he's going to like fall to the back because he's in Q trim for the dual race, things of that nature. I'm not saying this is how every dual race lines up. I'm using this as an example. So we're going to move to a 40 car field. I just wanted to visually show you what I'm getting at before we move to a 40 car field and before we move to how I actually create all my lineups for 40 car fields. So moving on here, so this is the NASCAR ownership for a 40 car field breakdown. I'm going to use some examples after this where I put Keselowski, I put Chase Elliott, Logano, Martin Truex Jr. in different places on this, and it'll show you how the percentage changes and how it actually looks when you make a lineup. And how it looks like when there's a big name like starting 28th and how that carries ownership and how it takes away ownership from different people. But this is how a 40 car field should legit look like. 15th, first should carry around 15% of the ownership. It's usually someone who has the fastest car, and people usually expect them to start first. Second and third are usually, the second dual winner and someone who people think are going to end up leading laps. And then 4th, 5th, 6th, 7th, and 8th I found carry practically no ownership. Like I said, unless it's a big name, then the guys around him carry even less ownership. I haven't looked at the actual starting stuff. I was going to use a previous race, but this works much more in line of how I see the ownership breaking down. And then, like I said, I'm going to run into some examples. So don't hate me too much. I'm going to stop saying I'm waiting for examples. I'm just going to continue on here. Either take my opinions or don't take them at this point. So yeah, 4th through 12th are usually dead ownership. And what I mean by that is normally people just don't play these guys. People are usually just playing guys from the back. They're playing the safe thing, especially at the last 2 plate races of the year where things tend to be a bit more crazy. Daytona's its own animal. First Talladega race is pretty boring. Usually no one wrecks. They got really nothing to lose there. It's just kind of a race. Summer Daytona is the wildest. That's just how it always is. And then this Talladega race, it's gone back and forth between being pretty calm and being pretty crazy. I think now that it's in the middle of a playoff round, it's going to be quite a bit crazy, especially with a lot of big names like looking outside the cut line, playoff-wise. I think this race is not necessarily going to be a wreck fest, but I think we'll have one big one, maybe 2 big ones. And if it really gets wild, if there's a lot of guys that have nothing to lose in the end, it could be a wreck fest. I certainly don't believe it's going to be a lap turner. I think it will kind of be a bit crazy. Okay, so looking here. Drivers from the back, 40th, 39th, 38th, 37th, 36 usually carry the most ownership. We're going to use an example of a 100-man tournament here in this situation. So 65% of the lineups have the car starting 40th, the car starting 39th, and the car starting 30th. 60% has 37th, and so on and so forth. So that's how I'm breaking it down. Why are those back positions so vital? Even if the car is in the back, like if it's Reed Sorensen starting 30th, he's like 10 miles per hour slower than the field. He can't lose you any points, and there's going to be a wreck at some point. And typically, even the underfunded teams, they typically don't start and park at these tracks. They usually try and stay out and push as long as they can because they know they can gain points on anybody who wrecks out. This is guaranteed points for them. They don't really have to race. They just have to survive. It's usually the safest to play these guys in the back. I don't have to tell you that. I'm just explaining where this ownership comes from. Now, you can see it quickly. It quickly drops off between 21st, 20th, and forward. But that's because every position is is playable at a plate track. People are just scared of, like the 4th through 8th and all that type of stuff, but every position is playable. Now this is not including any big names, like I said. This is just how I believe every position should break down ownership rise, regardless of who it is. People let names dictate their lineups far too much, and when those guys wreck, they're highly owned, and people end up losing a lot of money. I don't play any favorites. I play positions when it comes to plate races. So we're going to move to this example right here. Let me go back, and I got to write this down. 10:30. Let's move to this example right here. Let me throw Brad Keselowski starting 18th in here. I'm not saying he'll start here. This is just an example. Let's say if Keselowski starts 18th, you can see that his ownership, or that ownership at 18th, jumped from 20% owned to 40% owned with Keselowski being there. It also detracted ownership from 19th, 17th, and a couple cars from the back, 40th for example, and let's see, 31st, 22nd, and it took ownership away from the car starting first. Now, why is that? Well, typically, if you have a big name starting in the back, people are like, well, it's Keselowski. Like, I'd rather have Keselowski than the car that starts 40th. I believe Keselowski can at least win it, blah, blah, blah. Takes away from the lead because, oh no, did it just, oh, I thought Audacity crashed on me for a second. It takes away from the leader because, well, I could have the leader, but Keselowski starting 18th, I got to hop on Keselowski. I don't want to miss Keselowski starting in the back. It takes away ownership from the car starting, mid-20s a little bit because, most of the time it should be about 30% owned there. People will just jump away from any cars starting like 21st, 22nd, 23rd and jump on Keselowski because he's starting 18th because they're like, hey, yeah, it's Keselowski. We can't lose anything here. And things of that nature. Now I'm going to throw in 3 more cars and really show you how the ownership changes. So this is how you get ownership as it is in a real GPP because people just jump on names regardless of how it is. So I'm going to add Joey Logano, Chase Elliott, and Martin Truex Jr. to this lineup right here. So let's go. Okay, so here's Joey. So we're jumping from Joey Logano jumps 20% owned. Chase Elliott 35% owned because people know he's all right on Talladega. He's starting 13th. Martin Truex Jr. starting in the back for whatever reason, or it could be a big name starting in the back. So let's say he starts 33rd. Let's see how this ownership changes here. Well, It drastically, we're going to focus on the guys around Truex first. So it drastically kills the ownership around the people starting in the back because why would you play Corey LaJoie starting 34th when you could play Martin Truex Jr. starting 33rd? 75% of the people jump on Martin Truex Jr. So it drains ownership from 32nd, 33rd, pretty much every car starting behind, 30th. Because everybody seems to jump on Truex, and the cars around Truex will be the least owned in the back. And I have seen this before. I've seen cars in the back start at like 18% ownership because we'll have some big name in the back, and everybody jumps on him. Where I would just jump on the random punt at 18%, where I have nothing to lose. I mean, Truex Jr. could get in a wreck just as easily as my punt car can, but the ownership that Truex carries is worth the jump off of that. Let's focus on how Chase Elliott affects this starting 13th. Chase Elliott, 35% owned. Takes ownership away from the 14th starting position, the 12th starting position, the 10th, 9th. 9th through 5th are pretty much killed ownership-wise. And 5th usually ends up being like 2% owned, 1%. I've seen drivers in GPPs on plate tracks at like 3% ownership. I'm pretty sure that's where Haley was at, or he was at single digits, I believe, when he won in Daytona. Those are the types of drivers that I want in a one-off lineup. They can carry me to a win in a GPP if anything happens to this. I'm not going to add any more examples of this because I hate fucking with percentages here, but you get the idea of where I'm coming from, of how big names actually jump on. They carry ownership regardless of where they start. And things of that nature. Now, why am I giving this example? Well, we're going to move on to how I construct my lineups for super speedways. Like I said, I don't really care about having some big names. I focus on pure upside, and pure upside from the positional standpoint. I don't care what driver's there, unless it's like a big driver that I can't avoid. starting like ninth or something. But here we are. So this is my breakdown. This is how I make my lineups. These are the drivers that I play. I usually end up playing I'll probably play 12, maybe 15 lineups. Hell, I might max out the mini entry this weekend just for the hell of it. But these are the positions I'm playing for. The entire second half of the field, I will have in a lineup. 18th, 17th, 16th, 15th, 14th, I'll have in a lineup. 12th and 11th, I'll have in a lineup. And then 8th, 7th, and 6th, I'll try and have in a lineup. I usually find 3rd and 4th to be the least owned. Whoever I feel is least owned between those two positions, I'll usually go with. Like I said, 6th, 7th, 8th are usually dead zones in ownership, so I usually throw whoever's starting 6th with a lineup with people starting 39, 38, 37, 36, 35, something around there. But I will play everybody, so I can't tell you oh, I like this guy this week. Oh, I like this guy this week. I play plate tracks with pretty much every driver in some sort of lineup, and I honestly feel like I've had better luck doing that than picking a legit 13 card player pool, because things can happen. There's so many things that can happen, and then I've really seen this year that a lot of the cars that start between 11th and 18th end up finishing the race. It seems that the cars that wreck out most of the time start 10th forward or 19th back. I've seen a lot of cars this year, mid-teens that end up finishing the race. They just get lucky, they avoid wrecks, but either way, they're finishing races. So that's where I'm actually going to focus my ownership this year. I mean, obviously I'm playing 21st back, but I'm going to have more dart throws between 11, 12, 13, around there. Why am I not picking 13th? Why am I not picking 8th, 9th? Why am I not picking 10th? Well, I got to make a stand somewhere. It could be foolish, it could not. Like I said, if there's a big name that I feel like is going to carry a lot of ownership starting 15th, I'll probably fade them and jump on 13th or something. But this is how I make my lineups. I pick it basically on starting position and pure upside. I can't be here and tell you that, like I said, I choose certain guys here and there. And this applies more, probably even more for the Truck Series. I almost never play anybody inside the top 10 on the Truck Series. I try and play a lot of underfunded teams at the Truck Series. That usually works out, especially this year at Daytona, the first race they had. And we haven't been back to a plate track at Daytona for the Truck Series since that race, I believe. I think they only do 2 a year. Maybe they do 3 a year. I don't remember. Either way, I don't really care. But I mean, the truck race at Daytona this year was a shit show, and I expect the same thing here because truck drivers just can't drive. And Natalie Decker got taken out lap 2 of the truck race in February. Let's remember that. She had a blown tire. Something happened there where I made a joke before the race started. How long will it be? Natalie Decker will wreck. I guarantee it. She wrecked out lap 3 or something. Mechanical failure, blew a tire, whatever it was. She wasn't in the race. I expect her to actually be in this race at least for the first 30 laps in the Truck Series, and if she's in there, she's going to cause a wreck. Natalie Decker is horrible. And I'm not saying that because she's a girl. I'm not saying that because, she's pretty and I don't like pretty girls. No, legit. She could be an alien, man. She could legit be from Mars, and if they can't drive, I'm going to tell you that they cannot drive. Natalie Decker will cause a wreck. There will be some big wrecks in the truck race. I will just play guys from the back, straight up, 34th, 32nd, however many fucking trucks there's in the Truck Series now. I'm playing the guys in the back. I mean, you can use racing reference here. I'll get into some stats entering this week at Talladega, but is it really fucking worth it? Last 10 races at restrictor plates, even though they're all restrictor plates, Stenhouse is by far the best driver because he has 10 races, 2 wins, 4 top 5s, 4 top 10s, and 1 pole. He's led 137 laps. Probably second best would be Logano. 1 win, 6 top 5, 6 top 10. So Logano's going to gain ownership. So I'm probably going to try and fade Logano if I can, just based on this, because he's going to carry ownership regardless of where he starts, because everybody's going to be looking at these stupid stats and blah, blah, blah. Ryan Newman, probably third best. 10 races, 3 top 5, 7 top 10s, which is absolutely unheard of. This is including both Daytona and Talladega, but I mean, listen, they're the same cup. They're the same track. I mean, listen, Daytona, yes, it is smaller, but Talladega seems to be just a bit wilder because you could make more lines and whatever. Kurt Busch, 10 races, 1 top 5, 4 top 10s. Denny Hamlin, 1 win, 3 top 5s, 4 top 10s. Ty Dillon, 10 races, 0 wins, 1 top 5, 3 top 10s. Let me talk about Hamlin right fast. When he won the 500, I made a GGR stack. I didn't have Hamlin. I made a 3-card I focused on Eric Jones, Kyle Busch, I forgot who, Martin Truex Jr. I didn't play Hamlin in the 500. I just didn't play him. I didn't think he'd win. I had everybody else. Just didn't have Hamlin. You know. I like stacks here and there. I'll see what the field's looking like when we get to practicing tomorrow and things of that nature. Where was I? Paul Menard. Paul Menard used to be killer a few years ago. He's kind of gone off the edge here, but I think that's just because he has nothing to lose now. Obviously, this will be his last plate race. Not sure how that's going to affect a lot of stuff. I find that final races for a lot of drivers end up being like pretty dull. Just because, do you really want to just like purely wreck at your last super speedway race? Yeah, sure. Like, I mean, Stewart wrecked in his last plate race. I think Junior wrecked in his. I think Gordon wrecked in his. I'm trying to think of who else is retired recently. Casey Kane didn't really have a chance. He was just sidelined. But a lot of drivers end up getting wrecked in their last restrictor plate race. Can't really confirm or deny that. That's just kind of going off of my memory. So you got Paul Menard and Reagan in here on their last races. Are we going to see them wreck? Probably. Johnson, probably 8th best driver last 10 races. 1 top 5, 4 top 10s. Kyle Busch, 2 top 5s, 3 top 10s. Eric Almirola has only done 9 races because he was sidelined with a back injury. 1 win, 3 top 5s, 6 top 10s. Ryan Blaney, only 1 top 10. Then after this, it looks pretty shitty from here on out. You know, I mean, you got Boyer, 2 top 5s, 2 top 10s. Alex Bowman, 7 races, 1 top 5, 3 top 10s. Keselowski, 1 win, 1 top 5, 2 top 10s. Keselowski was dominant. Keselowski's probably the best plate racer in the series right now. He's just had bad luck. Chase Elliott, 1 win, 2 top 5s, 2 top 10s. Busher, 2 top 5s, 3 top 10s. Reagan, 4 top 10s. McDowell, 2 top 5s, 4 top 10s. Truex, 1 top 5, 1 top 10. And at this point, I'm all the way in like the 20th of Racing Reference, man. I mean, it's pretty shitty. They've changed the plate races so much with this stupid wicker bill, this package. Why even look at fucking history, man? Why even look at history for these races anymore? That's why, going back to what I do, is I purely just play positions and upside and stuff. That's how I'm entering this week for both races, and that's how it's going to be. If you want to know, I mean, I guess if you want to know who I like, I mean, you could tweet at me, be like, yo, Brandon, who you like tomorrow for the Cup race? And I'll be like, I guess 21st through 40th for lineups, and then like I guess I could tell you like drivers that I legit like. I'll probably do that post qualifying if you guys want me to, but I mean that's how I approach these races. That's just how I look at it. And I haven't seen a video or anybody really talk about ownership percentages. I've heard them talk about people playing this way and why you want to play 5 guys from the back but 1 guy in the top 15. Why you want to play 4 guys in the back, 1 lap leader, and 1 guy in like 15th to like throw off ownership. Well, here I showed you how I believe ownership should look on plate races. It usually doesn't look like that because people will pick different drivers and it's heavy in one position, lower in different positions. But this is how it usually goes. And people are afraid of playing, pretty shitty teams. I mean, I can't talk much. I didn't have Justin Haley at Daytona, but I usually play everybody. I just for some reason I skipped on Haley. Drivers that I'm gonna probably skip on, like just looking at right now. Let me look at. I don't know if they have the prices. Oh hell! Not signed in on DraftKings on this computer. Let me bring it up on my phone. Let me see if they have the prices out because I'm recording this Thursday. Yeah, Thursday morning, 10:30 a.m. Oh my God, come on, man. Oh, I made platinum for the first time, so thank God I'm getting, what did I get? Oh, I got $3. Thank you, DraftKings. Yeah, I made platinum uh, this month, just because I put a shitload of money into football, and so that was my tier. So thank you for the $3, DraftKings. I do appreciate it. Let me try and bring up the damn NASCAR stuff. It's just not loading here. Let's go. With 100 bucks. Oh, they got the trucks races out too, so they should have the prices out now. Yes, they do. Okay. Look at the prices right now. Kyle Busch. I'm not interested in prices, but I want to see who they have on the field right now. Interesting. Spencer Boyd. That's weird seeing him on the bottom. Brennan Gaughan. I'm gonna fade. I'm hard fading Brennan Gaughan. Straight up. He finished 19th at Daytona, but he had damage. He did not deserve that 19th place finish, and I don't think he would have finished 19th if it would have gone back to green. He finished 8th at Talladega, but he ends up being in a lot of wrecks, man. He was great last year, and I've always liked Brennan. I might not fade him, but I might not use him a whole lot because everybody hops on Brennan. Every article I look at, every podcast I see, every damn video I look at, they're like, Brennan Gaughan is the plate master. He's a great punt. Like, okay, if you're gonna be a 80% ownership, Brennan Gaughan, I love you as a person, but I will not play you for fantasy sports. Interesting, man. What a bunch of soft prices, man. Most expensive, 10,900 for Kyle Busch. Uh, yeah, if I make it, I've done it before where I've made a lineup with like 30,000 left on, and those have done just fine. Don't listen to anyone be like, you can leave a lot of money on the table, but just don't leave like 20,000. Well, it's like, dude, you leave as much as you want to leave, and you can win with just that much. You know. And then, yet again, you have to bring into the effect. I'm going to stop yapping right here because we are quite a ways through this thing. But you got to remember that a lot of new NFL players are on here, and they're like, well, I can play NASCAR too? Oh, well, Talladega's always fun to watch. Let me play Talladega DFS. And then, they're just going to play the big names too. So, you just got to use your head. Fight the ownership game. I mean, we're playing 3 games here. 1, we're trying to pick drivers who are going to score the most amount of points. 2, we're trying to pick drivers that are going to score the most amount of points with the lowest amount of ownership so you don't duplicate your lineup. And 3, we're trying to pick the drivers that are going to score the most amount of points, have low ownership, and miss wrecks. That's the game we're playing at Talladega on any super speedway. So that's really what I focus on. I don't really focus on the actual drivers themselves. I focus more on the contest in this example, or on these types of weekends, and it's worked out really well for me. Hope it works out for you. Thank you for listening. Thank you for looking at the video, and you guys have a fantastic weekend. NFL video will be out tomorrow. See you later.